for the compliment on the shirt, James. Much appreciated. It's now officially spring, and so I figured we'd change things up a bit. Anyway, that's enough chit chat. People have kind of come in. There was no one joining from the waiting room as we speak, so we may as well get formally started. Scott, thank you for joining, and thank you for joining everyone else. Welcome to another edition of Digital Drams. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, evening, Graham. It's we obviously want you to ask as many questions, get your taste notes in the chat, and there'll be a 15% discount code at the end of the tasting for all 4 of the SKUs on tonight, including the sample room range, which went live exclusive W Club members there about 45 minutes ago. So you will have seen the email, I'm sure most of you. So this is a world exclusive. Getting your hands on it. There'll be also some sampling of this in Moultrie's Walk tomorrow and Buchanan Galleries for those of you who are Scotland based as well. If you want to try it again, or prefer to pick up the bottle in store. But anyway, that's enough for me. Scott, before we jump into the liquid, do you want to give a bit of an introduction to yourself? You're the distillery manager at InchDairnie.
Okay, thank you, Luke. Well, I've actually been promoted last year. I'm now the distillery director, but
my apologies. I didn't.
No, it's okay. It just means I get to think of a little bit more than what I'm used to.
You're the Martin Scorsese of whiskey now, distillery director and all
that. Not quite. Good evening, folks. So I'm Scott Sneddon. I'm the distilling director at InchDairnie Distillery. So I'm fortunate to say that I'm employee number 2 of the distillery behind the founder, Ian Palmer. So I've been there coming up in 9 years come April. So I'm coming into my 18th year in making whiskey. I joined the industry after 10 years working in other industries in 2006, where I started off at Glenore Distillery as a site operations manager. And then after there, I moved to Glenkinchie Distillery just south of Edinburgh. And then in April 2015, I spoke to Ian Palmer about this fantastic opportunity to come and make some exciting whiskey, which I jumped at because it combines my passion and nerdiness for whiskey as well as my background in chemical engineering.
Marvelous. So 2018, you started with InchDairnie.
2015, yeah.
2015. Sorry, I misheard you. Yeah. And then obviously the first whiskey we're going to try. So we like to give everyone the order we're going to go in, so they can kind of pre-pour and get the samples ready. So we're going to go with RyeLaw to start, the whiskey that came out last year, and then the Leven, the Balgony, and then the Pitkevi. Is that right, Scott? Is that how you pronounce them?
Pitkevi, yeah.
Pitkevi. My apologies. Yep. So that's the order, folks. I'll stick that in the chat so you can see it. So you said you started in 2015. So while we crack open the RyeLaw, which was obviously distilled in 2017, do you want to introduce that to everyone?
Yeah, sure. I'll just pour it for my here. I didn't have a sample, so I'm pouring it from the bottle.
Well, you were telling me before we went on that you go through.
Yeah, I'll just show the bottle because we won an award, the World Whiskey Awards, for the bottle design. So if you haven't already looked at it, next time you're in the shop, please pick it up and, of course, buy. But otherwise, just have a look at the bottle.
Yeah, because you were telling me before we came live that you drink a bottle of that a night.
Not quite. Maybe a few weeks. Not quite.
No, it is a beautiful bottle. Martin in the chat says his bottle's bigger than ours. Well, that's what the 15% discount code at the end's for, Martin. Be actually curious while I'm just typing up the lineup here, to know from you guys watching, if you bought this on release last year. I know a lot of W Club members did. So if you've tried this before, if you bought a bottle last year, do let us know in the chat. In the meantime, Scott, I believe that the bottle itself, speaking of bottle design, kind of tells the story of the whiskies. Is that a good place to start, maybe as an introduction for the RyeLaw? Or would you rather just have a chat about the mashbill?
No, that's a very good start. So I suppose I'll highlight the one key one, which is on the neck here. So that replicates the screen that is in our hammer mill. So most distilleries use a roller mill rather than a hammer mill. And the reason why we use a hammer mill is because we don't have a mash tun, which is the traditional means of converting all that lovely starch into the sugars, is because we have a mash filter, which is predominantly used in making beer. And it was having that equipment that enabled us to investigate and look into making whiskey from rye. Because rye as a grain has a high amount of beta glucans, which for people who are bakers is what gives baking bread its strength. But also means from a distilling point of view that the mash holds on to the water. It becomes very sticky, almost like wallpaper paste. So it's very difficult to get your sugary wort from it. So by having the mash filter, it enabled us to process the rye. And I suppose the one thing we'd say about the RyeLaw is it's our interpretation of rye whiskey. How would I describe it? Well, I'd describe it as a Scottish sipping rye. And what we've done is we've taken the concept and put a little bit of a Scottish contemporary twist on it. And what I mean by that is most rye whiskey in America is used rye, but it tends to be either 100% rye or it can be mixed with other grains, but the rye tends to be the pure grain. But we use the malted rye. So the mash bill for this is 53% malted rye and 47% malted barley. So I notice a few people have started nosing already. So we'll just get straight in. So the first thing I get on it is I get the vanilla and caramel. Now, this is because we use virgin oak casks, which is not widely used within the industry. But again, we took the concept of rye whiskey from America, and in America, they use virgin oak casks. So we thought, well, that's a good starting point for us. So on the nose, I get that loveliness. Now, in the background, I get a lovely bit of almost perfume, quite just a subtle floral note and a bit of perfume. And that's actually coming from the grain. When we distill the RyeLaw, the new make spirit that comes off the still is a very light character spirit, and it's got a lovely floral nose to it. So I'm glad after 5 years it's still there.
I couldn't resist, Scott. I've had 2 sips already. Sorry.
I know that. Well, I was just going to say, let's just get stuck in and have a sip and then get talking. So, slange, guys. So right away, I got a burst of flavour in the mouth. So you get lovely, the vanilla and caramel that you're expecting on the nose. But then on the sides of the tongue, you get this wonderful spiciness just hitting it through. And then there's a sweetness that stays in the middle of your palate. So I feel it's got quite a medium to long finish. The spiciness that I get in my tongue does changes as I drink more, but also it can start off as either a pepperiness, either a white pepper spice, but there is other times when I've started to get like a ginger spice coming there as well. It really depends on either what I've eaten beforehand or where I am. But that's our take on American rye. So by using the malted rye, it tempers it down a little bit. So that's why I'm saying it's a good sipping rye, because I think for me, once you crack open the bottle, you never put the cap back on. You just keep drinking it because it's such a wonderful dram.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Steph gets oatmeal with fresh fruit and maple syrup on top. I think that's the great taste notes. Definitely on the nose, I agree with you. That kind of there's like that orange zest, like you've just zested it over an old fashioned, and yeah, that peppery spice. There's also like that kind of chili spice, and there's something else I can't put myself. Like that kind of like a chili salt you get for like rimming a margarita on the finish. It's gorgeous, but as you say, that kind of vanilla coconut as well. It's very interesting. Be very good to get some more people's thoughts, tasting notes wise, in the chat, and also as I mentioned, if this is the first time trying RyeLaw or not. Scott, just going back to the mash bill while people are musing over some tasting notes. So that mash bill you mentioned, that's specifically based off of that American rye style. It's a deliberate homage to those mash bills, because as people would have noticed, obviously it's officially classed as a single grain, but it is in all intents and purposes a rye whiskey.
Yeah, so to be classed as a rye whiskey, it has to contain a minimum of 51% rye. So we aimed for, well, we actually started off quite high and we ended up at 53%, which is what we're tasting tonight. And then where it starts to get a little bit different is it's going to be put into a virgin oak cask, which we've done. So for this instance, for the RyeLaw, this is from the Ozark region of America. And also, traditionally in Scotland, we fill our casks at about 63.5% strength. But to be an American rye, it's under 62.5%. So we follow that same principle. So for all intents and purposes, we follow the process for making rye as an American rye. But you rightly said there's no definition under the SWA for rye whiskey in Scotland, so that's why it's called a single grain.
Very interesting. We've got some great taste notes coming back in there. Ian says fresh fruit and pepper, banana with a sweetness, creamy, buttery mouthfeel. Kirsty says dangerously drinkable. Nicolette says almost a chai spice in the finish. Graham says fresh fruit, a bit of Werther's Originals taste with spice, fruity and spicy, getting a slightly earthy but not overpowering session scotch. It's definitely a session whiskey. I agree with both Kirsty and Ashworth. Was why I like it is because it kind of bucks that tradition of being a session scotch, because it doesn't taste in that same kind of class. But I definitely agree with the overall sentiment. I mean, we had the Cura, if I probably butcher the pronunciation every time we've done tastings with them, I get it wrong. But they've got some interesting rye whiskies. You know, the Scandinavian distillery just behind me there. We've had them on the call before, and it reminds me of some of their better releases. It's spicy, but not enough to put off someone who doesn't normally drink rye. It's got all the kind of, ticks a lot of the right boxes for me. Neil says it's a bit waxy in the mouth as well, which is a very good point. The mouthfeel is really interesting on this whiskey. So Scott, why, as a new distillery, obviously InchDairnie, you're new in the sense that this was your first release last year, but you've been distilling a long time. What was the thought around making this your inaugural release? What was the kind of the logic behind that?
Well, I suppose it was twofold. The first one is and I'll go a bit technical here, so apologies for those that aren't technical. In the production of the rye whiskey, we used our Lomond Hill still. So a Lomond Hill still is a pot still bottom and it's got a column still neck. And what that did is it created a very light character spirit. So the fact we've got a light character spirit marrying up with a virgin oak cask, we felt that after 5 years that the balance between the flavour from the liquid and the flavour extracts from the oak, we reached a peak. So that's why we decided that we wanted to release it. Also, our single malt, as we call the InchDairnie, won't be released until we reckon it's 12 years old, which is 2029. So there's a lot of people been following the distillery. So what we wanted to do was to showcase what we can do. You know, we have not just another whiskey distillery, and that's not doing a disservice to all other distillers. But that's the angle we took. The fact that we've taken, we're using a mash filter rather than a mash tun. Our stills, we're taking a slightly different road to other distillers. So we wanted to be able to showcase that and also do like we're doing tonight, show it to people and get people's view and opinion on it, because as a distiller, that's what I'm looking for, both positive and negative, or coming about it in a different way. So in 2017, after 5 years of maturation, we felt that the RyeLaw was ready to, it was well balanced, as a lot of people have said, and we felt it was ready to be consumed by the people here tonight.
No, excellent. Marvelous.
One of the things I would like to point out, Luke, and you kind of alluded to it at the start, there is a little bit of an orange note that you said there, a very subtle citrusy note, and that's why I think it works so well as an old fashioned. I'll get my pun there, given the fact I've tasted some of your wonderful old fashions, Luke. It does make a wonderful old fashioned.
No, it certainly does. Yeah. There's a rye old fashioned that I've both had as a guest and made at the distillery. And it works. Does work tremendous in an old fashioned. If you are looking to add to your old fashioned, folks, it's £107 normally on the whiskyshop.com. With the discount code tonight, I think it's about £90. Let me just check there, £90.95 with your 15% off at the end of this tasting. So yeah, I think it's not bad for it's a whiskey that's quite complex. It keeps going. We've got some great taste notes coming in there. It's an inaugural release. It's kind of virgin oak experimental mash bill. So at £90, I think it's definitely worth picking up if you're looking for something to have over the long Easter weekend. We've got Ryan's
the one thing I would ask is, on the bottle there is 10 key points. So there's a competition for you, Luke. Someone to identify the 10 key points that we have around the distillery identity within the bottle.
Yeah, well, that's a good. If you email me with the 10 key points, we'll get you a free future digital drams. I can't promise you a free bottle of RyeLaw, I'm afraid, But the fresh fruit notes on the first sip, says Ryan, with more spice coming through the more you drink. Maple syrup throughout. Maple syrup is a great is a really
Yeah,
good
very
note.
good. Yeah.
Aaron says smells like coffee and marshmallows with nutmeg and orange rind. Another great tasting note, but they're all very accurate, but also very different. Shows the kind of complexity. Virgin oak from the Ozarks. You said, Scott, before we move on. I don't know if you've seen the Netflix series with Jason Bateman. Have you?
Yes, I have. There was no association.
There's
to
no,
what
you weren't
no,
these casks weren't part of a Mexican money
no,
drug
they
laundering thing.
weren't
No.
part. Oh, they weren't part of that scenario. No,
Okay.
it was one of these. I mean, because we were looking at virgin oak, it's no. There's a plethora of different forests within America to achieve that. So the Ozark was the first year. But what we've done is in subsequent years, we've chosen a different forest. And I can tell you that the liquid coming behind the original launch is different each year. And that's principally because of the wonderful wood that we've been getting over the years.
Marvelous, excellent. Kirsty says the Ozarks is the primary oak forest in the US.
Yes.
Perfect. Do you mean primary as in it's the first in class, or it's the first ever, But yeah, I don't know. That was a bad joke. But
That was a bad joke.
it was it was really bad. But we'll maybe come on from the RyeLaw now, folks. And we'll come on to the sample room range. So our new release. With the first one we're going to go for is the Levin. So Aaron said tastes like plum and honey with coffee biscuits. First in class and most extensive, says Kirsty. I've always said the reason I like the American oak, it's Quercus alba, isn't it, Scott?
Yeah,
and it's I like it because like me, it grows thick and fast. But yeah, there you go. So tell us a bit about this Levin.
so it's from the people from the area, it's leaving, not
Leaving.
Levin.
Sorry.
Leaving. So what we tend to do is we tend to pick the names of our whiskeys from the areas surrounding us within Fife, because we're proud to being a Fife distillery. Now, I know it wasn't asked, but I'll explain a little bit. So RyeLaw is a rye whiskey, but because, as we've alluded to, we can't call it a rye whiskey. But what we could do is we can get rye in the name, because just in the doorsteps of the distillery is a farm called RyeLaw. So that's the principle in which we do a lot. So here in the glass for the first product from the sample room range is the Leaving, which is only about 6-7 miles away from the distillery. So how the sample room came about is I get an opportunity to tinker. So I've got a lot of different casks sitting in the warehouse, and when we were launching the rye whiskey, the RyeLaw, a lot of people were, although we put it into a virgin oak cask, a lot of people were asking, I wonder how this would sit with maturing in another cask. So that got me thinking, how can I assess that flavour? Because one of the concepts was put it into a sherry cask. So what we did is I went into the warehouse and I drew a sample of the InchDairnie single malt that was happily sitting maturing in a Amontillado cask. Now, we don't call it a sherry cask because to be called sherry, it has to be from the Jerez region. But what we decided to do is we went into the region outside it called Montilla. And Montilla is a wonderful place. If you get a chance to go and see it, it's absolutely beautiful. And it's actually where the bulk of the Pedro Jimenez grapes are grown. So what we went there, and it's called, the grape is Amontillado, but we can't call it sherry, but it's Amontillado. So it gives a lovely richness. So what I did is I started playing about with different combinations of the rye whiskey as a base whiskey and adding more of the Amontillado matured InchDairnie. And what you have here is the result. What I'm looking to do is just to give it a little bit more depth and richness to what we maybe didn't get from the RyeLaw. So on the nose, you'll notice right away the vanilla and caramel that we got before, and that lovely floral has actually been taken down a little bit. Now, I've got for those of you not aware, I'm not feeling the best tonight, so I need to add a little bit of water to my whiskey just so I can open it up a little bit because my nose not functioning as well as it used to. So when I open it up, I get a lovely nuttiness, which I always associate when I get an Amontillado. So that's what I was looking for. So this is a the sample in front of you, everybody, is a 50-50 blend. So it contains 50% cask strength RyeLaw and 50% InchDairnie autumn campaign matured exclusively in a Montado cask. And the InchDairnie whiskey was 7 years old and the RyeLaw was 5 years old. So now, as we said before, because the RyeLaw is classed as a single grain, what we have here is a blend because it's a combination of grain and single malt. So I'd love to hear what everybody else is getting on the nose for this first sample.
Well, I definitely, someone had mentioned it for the RyeLaw, but I get it much more on this, is that kind of nougat sort of flavor. It's like almost like that nutty and something kind of sweet and nutty in there. Steph says cake and raisins. Yeah, definitely agree. You kind of put that in my head when you mentioned PX. I know you said that there's no PX in this Amontillado grape, but when you said it was where the Pedro Jimenez was grown,
I
I was
suppose
just straight away.
the raisins. Yeah, the raisins is coming out there.
Yogurt, says Rob. Sure, yogurt's a good one, especially maybe like a crunchy yogurt with a bit of either like one of those Muller corners or one of those yogurts where the top of it is filled with kind of like granola or some sort to put through yogurt. I'm Christmas cake here we've got as well. A couple of Christmas cakes there. Butterscotch and penny toffee, hazelnut vanilla raisins, salted caramel toasted marshmallows. Lots of great taste notes coming in there.
Yeah, these are fantastic. Really good.
Jonathan says sticky toffee pudding with rich salted caramel sauce. Clotty dumpling, says Neil. Excellent tasting.
Clotty dumpling.
Clotty dumpling. My apologies. Yeah. That's me being I'm just a foreigner. From the scale. But yeah, the Clotty dumpling. Excellent tasty notes. I suppose I've already taken a sip, but we will when we take a sip as well, Scott, and see what we get on the palate.
Yeah.
So Charles McLean, it just popped up in front of me there. Said of this, amber in hue with moderate beading, mellow with light prickle. The top notes are rounded and faintly reminiscent of Ryvita crisp bread. Ryvita is good taste now. With a trace of vanilla, toffee, and green sticks. A lightly sweet tart to start. Mouth drying leads to lengthy, spicy finish. Don't normally read other people's taste notes on this like that, but it just literally happens to be in front of my nose. And it is quite apt, especially the rye bread one.
I get that, as you said there, the lovely rye bread, but I get that getting wrapped with like an almond and sherry. I get more of the nuttiness coming through and those sherry flavors. And what we found is by adding the single malt to it, it just tempered down the spiciness a little bit. So the spiciness is still there, but not as prevalent as it was as the RyeLaw. So it's still telling you that it's a rye whiskey, but the texture and the body is a lot more there, so it's a lot more richer. And that's what I was trying to do, trying to see how far I can go in which direction. So what this is telling me that in future I'll be putting some of the RyeLaw that I take out of the virgin oak cask, and I'm going to put it into different casks to see how it matures. Now, I may put it into sherry casks, but I think I may put it into other casks. That's something that you'll just have to watch this space for in the future. But what this was doing was just letting me know that we can get this depth of flavour and a lovely richness to the already existing RyeLaw.
Definitely. I don't know if anyone at home has added a drop of water. I did after the first two tastes, and I get a bit more of that licorice and maybe a bit of marzipan as well coming through after, which I didn't get before adding a drop. It definitely opens it up a bit. I was actually drinking a Speyside Manthania cask during the week, Scott. I won't mention the brand, but it had very similar licorice notes. Obviously, Manthania is obviously very different. Well, I mean, it's not too different. They're both dry sherries, but the Amontillado would be a bit more nutty, I suppose.
Well, that's where you're getting the almond. The marzipan is what you said it right there. That's I get more marzipan there than you get from an almond, but I think that's because of the sweetness that comes from other parts of it. So your description of marzipan is probably better, more aligned to what I got. Yes, and the licorice, I always find with this one here is adding that drop of water. It just adds that level of texture, and licorice is a word I've been trying to find what it was, so you've just added to me as well. But yes, I think each time you have a little taste, people, I think you'll find there's something else comes through to it. And as the air gets to it, again, it's got to be completely change as the night goes on. which I love about whiskey. It just keeps it very interesting.
Yeah, no, certainly. Dominica said plum cake as well, which is yeah, that's a very good tasting note, because plum cake can have a lot of those elements as well. Plum cake can taste a bit licoricey, it can taste a bit
Yes,
marzipan-y as well in aspects. So that's a very, very good tasting note. But it's also got that fruitiness and that richness to it as well. So yeah, love that. And it is quite
some excellent tasting notes, I have to say.
And as Charles McLean was saying, the what was it, the mouth drying as well, it definitely is. It's not an overtly dry whiskey, but it does just catch you at the start. It just dries the edge of that tongue on the
Yeah,
front. Corey said Madagascan vanilla ice cream, like cart door, one you get for like 3.75 in Tesco's, £3 with a club card. I'd say 3.75 in Tesco's maybe prior to 2022. It's probably about £8 in Tesco's now. And
especially
£4 with a
Madagascan
club
vanilla.
card. I see Steph nodding along there. But the or Stefella, whoever's I don't know your name, sorry. But yeah, brilliant. No, this is excellent. This is obviously the first of that new sample room range. So maybe just I suppose we didn't maybe should have done this more before we started sipping this. But while people are finishing this dram, do you want to maybe tell us around the kind of concept around that range overall on a macro level? And obviously these are 50 CLs, so they're slightly smaller bottles than the RyeLaw. £59 for this one. So with the discount, this will be £50, 15 cent. So literally released to the general public tomorrow, 15 pence, sorry. Released to the general public tomorrow, but exclusive to W Club tonight, if you're looking. With the discount code we give out at the end. So yeah, what was the idea overall behind this range, Scott?
Well, what it was is I was tinkering away trying to understand what different flavour profiles we could do with the rye and what direction I could go in for future development of it. So like any time we do anything, we draw a sample. So that's how the sample bottle is just the same size. And what we've done is the actual label is just a little bit more information that we normally get in our own bottle. Now, what we did, and this is just for people, we know that people would ask different questions, is we've included on it the sweetness, because by having the Amontillado, you get a lovely richness, and we measure that via the sweetness. We've also done phenol levels, because some of the samples tonight have peated them in. Now, I'll be the fact that a lot of people haven't seen the bottle. You'll get questions after the fact, because I'll not go into tonight. Look, but it'll be about phenols in a certain sample, and then the other ones is esters. So esters are just a measurement of the complex hydrocarbons that gives you the wonderful flavors. So we gave this as a means of understanding and be able to talk between the different samples. But all the other information on it, regarding the strength, the cask type, it's the sort of questions that when we do sampling at events, people ask those type of questions. So what we were trying to do is a replication of what we do for any sample that I draw from a cask, but giving a little bit more information for people who are then drinking the. So that's purely how it came about. Is we drew samples. We thought that it was a wonderful liquid, and before we know it, we decided that this was something that we'd like to release from the distillery. And here we are tonight on the second launch of whiskey from the distillery. It happened very quickly. We did this at the tail end of last year, and before we knew it, here we have a launch in March.
No, excellent. Brilliant. And James, in the meantime, James has said, loving this complexity, Battenberg, nutmeg, plum loaf, vanilla ice cream, menthol finish. Menthol finish. I get that.
Yeah, that's a very
Not
good.
talking about Pall Mall clicks now, Scott, all right? But don't you can get them anymore anyway. But yeah, no, it's very interesting. But yeah, you mentioned esters and phenols there. I went to school in ester, but I didn't go to school with any phenols. But we might come on to the next one, the Balgoni. Get that poured. I'm gonna keep it. I've only got a tiny bit left, but I'm gonna keep a small drop of the leave-in for comparison. So tell us about the Balgoni.
So the Balgoni it follows the same principles that we have with the leaving, and it's about understanding what flavour direction we could go in. So one of the concepts I've been looking at is how would smoke work with the spiciness and the lovely sweetness, caramel, vanilla of the rye. So what I did is for the Balgony is we have, I'm trying to make it simplistic. In a normal year, we produce about 8 different styles of spirit, and 2 of those are peated variations.
Scott, you don't
Kinglassie.
have to go too simplistic here. You know, there's
Okay.
there's a lot
The
of
first
guys
one
on
is
who, or people on in general, who love that kind of stuff.
the first one is Kinglassie, and Kinglassie is what we call the trading malt. So that's a malt that I exchange to other distillers and to other third parties. And the second one is Kinglassie, and the Kinglassie is specific to the distillery. And the difference between the 2 products is that the Kinglassie, the grain is Fife grown. We changed the mill settings, we changed the yeast, and we changed the distillation, and it just gives you more flavour. But what I was trying to understand is the peated whiskey that we produce is not the medicinal TCP that you get in Islay. It's very much a subtle smokiness. So what I wanted to do is understand what smoke would bring to the party. So what I did is I got some Kinglassie that had been maturing in refill casks, and I purposely chose refill casks because I didn't want the flavour of any other, if it was in a sherry cask or in a bourbon cask, any of that flavour interacting with the already rich rye. I just wanted to understand what would the smoke bring. So in the nosing room, I just started tinkering away, adding various amounts of Kinglassie to the RyeLaw. And once I got to about 25%, I was happy with the result. And what we have in your glass is that end result. So the Balgony is 25% Kinglassie and 75% the rye.
Excellent. I'm just after. I was nosing while you were talking there. I'm after already taking a sip. It's a burst of flavor, and the finish is stunning. It's got a gorgeous nose, but it's more subtle. You wouldn't even notice some of the smoke, but it just explodes when it hits the tongue.
Yeah, the smoky in this is just at the end. You have to go, and this is what I quite like is I want people to get a bit of a surprise. Now, I've explained what it is, but other people might not know about it. So I want it to be a surprise because on the nose, there's no indication unless there's a little subtleness of the smokiness at the end. But as you said, Luke, as soon as you taste it, that's where the burst of flavour just comes through and you get this lovely, well, I'm going to have a taster now. So cheers, everybody. So again, you get the sweetness that we had before with the caramel and the vanilla. But what we find is then you get after that, you get the smokiness. And it's only as the smokiness starts to dissipate, you get a bit of dryness. Then I get the rye spiciness then coming on the tongue. So it's adding that little bit of smokiness within the flavour profile of what we had with the RyeLaw.
No, it's interesting. It'd be good to get people's thoughts on this one. Graham has said, love the burst of caramel and then that hint of smoke. Totally agree. There's something that's caramel adjacent for me personally. That's on the front, but it's on the tip of my tongue, but I can't quite put my finger on it. But no, it's really interesting. It's almost got like it reminds me of the probably most similar whiskey I can think without minus the peat is Bushmills used to do a crystal malt whiskies back in the day. I think it was the Millennium Malt or something it was called. And I don't know why they didn't do more of them. They were gorgeous whiskies, but they had this really interesting, maybe a bonfire toffee or banoffee. No, bonfire toffee is what Jonathan said. Yeah, it is that and that light toffee. There's almost like that over smoked honeycomb or something in there. It's really interesting.
Because what I didn't want to do is I didn't want the smoke to overpower the rye flavors that we had. Is quite delicate, the caramel and the toffee, and you can taste it. But what I didn't want it to be is it overpowers it, and all you get is that smokiness and the dryness that you get from a wonderful peated whiskey. So that's why I was trying to try and get the best of both worlds. And that's what the whole point of the sample room range is just really experimenting with the different liquids to try and get what I feel is the optimum point.
Cinder toffee, says Stephen, and we got fudge rather than caramel, says Ian, which is an interesting one. I definitely think that now that you say fudge, actually, Ian, even a bit more tablet than caramel in some respects.
It's very much I get the tablet nose rather than the fudge nose. Now I get it periodically, and I said I'm not feeling the best tonight, so I'm not getting it. But before when I did this, I got some of the burnt orange that we got before. I got a very subtleness to it before.
No, I can definitely see that. Yeah. Martin said the smell and the taste are way apart. Smells
Yep.
quite subtle, but a real punch in the face with bonfire toffee spice, smoke coming in later. There is, the more you sit with it on the finish, there's almost like that cedar wood chipping, kind of like burning in the background. Almost like a Swedish logs, what do they call them? Those ones you burn down the middle. It's quite interesting. It's a gorgeous whiskey, and it opens up more. You sit with it. We added water to the first one, so I suppose it'd be rude not to do it with this one. These are 58.5%. Was that what they came out the cask at?
Yep.
What was the kind of thoughts around the ABV?
Well, as I said to you, this is for people who I think are very interested in whiskey and know and are knowledgeable about what they like and what they don't. So for that, a lot of people, when we launched the RyeLaw, when we released it at 46.3%, a few people said they wish they could get a rye whiskey that was slightly more. So that's with that thought. No, the sample room range, as I said, is straight out the cask. So that's what you get here is literally taking out the cask, a little bit of filtering to remove the char that's within it, and that's what. So no need to add anything, because I think is people who are knowledgeable, you can get to add water to it, and as you do add water, it will open up and it will change its profile.
No, totally. That's well said. I think, yeah, trusting the consumer to be a bit mature and
Yeah.
inquisitive about it. No, I
Yeah, I
agree.
mean, because we are aware that the type of bottle it is, it's very simplistic. It's very much showcasing the liquid within the bottle. So I didn't want to say to people, this is how you should drink it. What I defined as being, this is, for me, a good balance on this instance of smoke and the spiciness. But I wanted other people to then, reduce it as to suit their own palate.
And if you're watering it down at home, what's the exact mineral content of Fife water around Glenrothes if we want to really go through the full experience? But
well, all I can say is that the water that we get in Fife is from the same loch as where the Highland Spring is drawn from. So it's a natural spring that goes to Highland Spring, and the water source for that spring is the loch that is from the Glenrothes water supply. So it's a good water that we have in proximity to the distillery. But I don't know the exact content of it. I will get that for any future tasting.
yeah, I imagine that would be, the more taste of these tastings you do, Scott, I think that'll come up a lot. That's a very common question. The Aaron said a bit of water brings out nice red apple note hidden behind the bolder flavors. I totally agree. Really get that red apple. Neil says sweet smoky nose, very big burst of flavor, burnt sugar notes, and longer mild smoke finish. So again, yeah, another great tasty note. There was also yeah, price wise, this is the same. They're all 15 of the three sample range off £59. So with your 15%, this will be about £50 and 15 pence. As I said before. Any other any questions on this one, folks, before we move on, or anything else you want to say about the Balgony before you move on, Scott? I always thought Balgony was the ship that was sank in the Falklands, but that's not.
No,
that's Belgrano. So my apologies.
an interesting fact about Balgony is Balgony is an area in Fife, and it's also Balgony Farm is where the majority of our rye is actually grown. The Balgony Farm estate in Fife.
What's the etymology of that, or the origin of that name of the Balgony? Because it does sound very Spanish or Italian, doesn't it?
I do not know. Look, as again, you've put me on the spot. I don't know. I've not done my proper homework, so I will learn so that if I do get asked to come on again, I'll be able to provide you a lot more detail in what I say.
Perfect. Although I suppose Bal is quite common in the Gaelic language, so I doubt it's got that exotic an etymology. But yeah. But anyway, no, that's excellent. So we come on to the Pitkivi or Pitkivi. Brilliant. So yeah. So tell us about this one, Scott.
Okay, so the first two drams have been predominantly based around rye, hence the reason why we did them together, because I was trying to understand how far I could push the rye whiskey. So in that same mantra, I have access to quite a big portfolio of different whiskies. As I said, we produce about 9 different styles of spirit within the distillery. Now, I mentioned the Kinglassie as being one of our peated one that we talk about as being the trading malt. The trading non-peated malt is a liquid called Strathhenry, and that equates to about 70% of what I produce. But I also do InchDairnie, and InchDairnie we do it slightly different. To be InchDairnie, it's the grain is grown in Fife, but we do it on seasons. So we do a spring, a summer, an autumn, and a winter. So the spring and summer campaigns we use a spring barley, and the autumn and winter we use a winter barley, which is not readily really used within the industry. So what I was doing is the autumn that we produce has got a lovely maltiness to it, and it's quite a heavier, richer new make spirit. So we tend to put it into stronger casks. So I have, in this instance, I have it in a Paolo Cortado cask, again from the same area out with Jerez and Montilla. So what I was doing is I was blending away, doing different combinations of Strathhenry and Kinglassie. And then on this occasion, I thought I'd like to add a little bit of richness to it. So what we have in front of you is it contains 37% Strathhenry in a refill cask, 37.5% of the InchDairnie Autumn that's been maturing for 7 years in a Paolo Cortado cask, and then 25% of the Kinglassie again in the refill cask, just as we had with the previous sample. So again, what I'm looking to do is understand the flavour profile that we can create with the different liquids. And because all of the liquid that I used was single malt, this in theory is the first single malt from InchDairnie Distillery. We won't call it the InchDairnie single malt, because to be an InchDairnie single malt, it has to be 100% from Fife, but it's a good enough quality liquid that I wanted it to be part of the sample room range, just as an indication of things to come in the next 4 or 5 years leading up to the launch of our 12-year-old single malt. So that's where we got here. So on the nose, right away, you'll know it's a single malt again. The first 2 samples of the sample room range are more attuned to the flavour on the nose is more linked to the rye, but on this, right away, you know it's a single malt.
It's very like the Balgony, not in terms of the flavors, but in terms of the fact that you don't I wouldn't nose this and think I'm about to get the bit of peat that I know is coming.
The smokiness is only right at the very start of the nose in this case, whereas another sample I get the smoke at the end. For this one, it's smoke, then it goes into and the complexity that you expect from a single malt. But start first, just at the very start is when I get the smokiness coming through. But yeah. I'd be very interested to hear what everybody else is getting.
Yeah, likewise. I get a lot of wild mint on the nose, and maybe kind of sort of wild garlic as well.
Wild garlic.
Yeah, first time I've ever gotten a whiskey, but maybe I'm
just, it's first time I've ever heard it being in a whiskey. But no.
Maybe it's my dinner cooking in the other room. I can smell.
Maybe, but, yeah, we'll blame Julie. But it's interesting what you said there about it. I get a menthalness to it as well, but only a very subtle one, the freshness you get from the menthol. So on the nose, it's only, for me, it's just at the very start, it's giving you a little clue of what you're going to get. It's only really like the other sample. It's only in the taste that it really comes through.
Well, on the palate, it's almost like a red wine, both in the juiciness at the start, and then it's subtly dry on the outside of the mouth.
Yeah,
and then the peat only hits in the finish.
Yeah, that's it. The peat comes in the finish, and then you're left with a lot more dryness. There's none of the spiciness that we had. The previous one has been removed, but what it's replaced with, as you're right, is the dryness that you get from a peated spirit.
Great, Graham in the chat there has backed me up on the wild garlic, so thank you, Graham. I think we're breaking new ground in whiskey here. Jonathan has said really like the balance of it. Doesn't quite go on the same journey on the palate as the Balgony. It is almost like it's remarkable. The finish to me is very like a kind of like Crianza or like a Reserva Rioja, like a really like an oaked red wine. It's quite interesting. And then yeah, the peat kind of grows on you on the finish. Be
Yes.
interesting to get more people thinking it. Jonathan says really like the balance of it. Yeah, sorry, I've already said that. Aaron says the finish just keeps on going forever. Totally agree. Much longer finish than the first three, which weren't exactly short finishes, but yeah, it's been a good minute and a half since I took that sip, and I can still taste it.
No. And I think that's to do with the introduction of the Paula Cortado InchDairnie look, because that's got a long finish, so that's adding that complexity to it, coating the tongue and just keeping going.
Yeah, I love a good Palo Cortado. Myself, we were, yeah, because I've been lucky enough to try that Amontillado that you use with the cocktails at the distillery, which is yeah, a very drinkable cask. But the Palo Cortado here this is absolutely gorgeous. I must say, I don't know. I'm trying to. I must go back and sample the other two now because I don't want to go with recency bias and say it's the favorite of the four that we've tried. But it's up there. But maybe I'm just a sucker for that extra bit of peat and that kind of fruitiness that goes on there.
Yeah.
Graham says very lovely finish, like a good Rioja with a hint of smoke. Does keep on going. There's definitely a red berry flavor that's really coming through there. Almost menthol background, but not overpowering. Peat comes in and keeps giving, says Martin. So yeah, be interesting again to see what anyone else thinks. And this again, same as the other one, it's only £59 with 50 pounds and 15 pence with the 15% off. So yeah, it's definitely worth picking up as the unofficial first ever single malt from InchDairnie. Brilliant. So any other while maybe people get their some more tasting notes in and while people muse on that whiskey, have you anything else you'd like to share about the production down in InchDairnie? I know we've done obviously the mash bill or the kind of experimental mashes and the hammer mill, which are kind of two really unique things about the distillery. I mean, there's lots unique about it, but I suppose the idea of Fife single grain on the bottle of RyeLaw, I suppose you're very proud to be a Fife whiskey. Officially, you're a lowland whiskey. It's something you're trying to amend, I believe.
Yeah, yes, because when people think of Lowland, they've got a vision or a thought in their head regarding either Glenkinchie, my previous site, which is a Lowland one, or Auchentoshan is a Lowland one. But because the first launch is is rye whiskey, which isn't a Lowland feature at all, we're very proud of being Fife. No, as I said before at the start, to be an InchDairnie whiskey, it has to be Fife grown, Fife distilled, and Fife matured. So we're very proud of that fact. So that's why on the bottle we said Fife, not Lowlands, but Fife, because we're proud of it.
Mm. No, that's very good. And is there many other distilleries in Fife?
Of course there is.
You don't have to name them. That's fine. That was good. I
No,
could
there
see
is when
the cogs turning.
you've got Dathmill, and then you've got Kingsbarns, and then you've got Lindores. But you've also got, from a bigger volume producer, you've got the big production of Cameron Bridge, the grain distillery for Diageo. So they're all within Fife. So quite and of those, though, the oldest one outstanding of the Cameron Bridge is Dathmill, and that's been about since about 2005, 2004. So all others, Kingsbarns came the same time as us in 2015, and then followed by a few years later in 2017 with Lindores, Abbey. So it is a young distilleries in the area, but we are growing. In the coming this year, in fact, Eden Mill is currently building their new distillery in St Andrews. So another one's going to be added to the fold. So it's a very exciting time to be in a Fife distillery.
I mean, you're putting the volume of distilleries in Campbelltown to shame, like, so.
Yeah, well, as I said in the pre-conversation, our capacity at the moment is 2 million litres of alcohol, but at this moment in time, we have installed two new additional stills. We're in the process of piping them up and connecting them up to the control system. So hopefully by the summer, I'll have an additional capacity of 2 million litres. So that means the total capacity of the distillery would be 4 million litres. But I'll not be going to that volume straight away. I'll be slowly ramping up over the next couple of years towards that volume.
Marvelous. Well, we love to get, this is the kind of bit where we start to, I suppose, I'm going to go back through and taste the other three. We get people to ask any more questions, or maybe get their kind of order preference into the chat. The code for discount off the sample room range and the RyeLaw tonight is WS24S or RR. How do you pronounce it here? I get
R.
teased for how I pronounce my R's. Yeah, the WS 24 sample room range is the discount for 15% off all the whiskies we sampled tonight. And all these releases, I don't think we've mentioned, Scott, they're all 390 bottles per batch of the sample room range. So it is super limited. As I say, that single malt is
it's
the first.
basically one cask of each type is what we did in the development.
Yeah, so I mean, all these. I mean, if it was me, which I will be doing, is getting the set. But yeah, I would think definitely worth picking up for that price. Carroll's is a new distillery for me. Very impressed. A new distillery for a lot of people, I imagine. Obviously, with this being a second release, but yeah, it is a very impressive distillery. You're not open to the public, are you, Scott?
No, we're not open to the public. Much to a lot of people's dismay. No, we're too busy making whiskey. Look, we're not geared up for it. And if we were doing visitors, we would do it properly. But they're just, we're a new distillery, we're a small team. We're focusing all our efforts into making the wonderful liquid that everybody's getting to taste tonight.
Perfect. David's asking the chat there. I've responded to him, but just for everyone else who's wondering, the code is got 14 days. That's the code for all our digital drams, is 2 weeks from the date of the tasting. But with this one, more than even some of our other tastings, I would recommend. I don't think it might do. I might not sell out tonight, but this one could sell potentially quicker than our other one. So the code is only valid online, not in store. And between those 390 bottles, some of the bottles have gone in store and some of them are gone on our web. So I would move quicker if you can, rather waiting, get a loan off your friend rather than waiting for payday, Dave, you know. Yeah, we'll see what people are thinking in the chat.
Quite a variety of comments regarding the preference, which is always exciting to see.
Yeah, the leaving is up there. We've got the first three in there where we had the leaving as the favorite. Neil's gone with the what was I saying? The Pidikiev. And Neil is yeah, we've got 4 as well from Ian, 2, 3, 4, 1 from Claire and Ian. Carol's gone 3. You're right, there is a real variation. 3, 4, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Looking quickly there, I think the leaving is pipping it, and it's kind of neck on neck between the 3 and 4. But I think at the moment the leaving looks to be people's favorite. Graham Glennis's leaving seems to be the favorite. Yeah. Leaving says Zhao. Gavin says leaving as well. So yeah, I actually was fortunate enough, Scott, to try these a few weeks ago, and actually tried the kind of the unofficial pre-release samples that slightly changed since from before Christmas.
Yeah.
So I've tried I've kind of been fortunate enough to follow this a bit on its journey, and I must say that I'm surprised. I like the leaving. I like them all 3. But when I first got the samples home, it was my last one I went to. Probably went down in the peatiness and in terms of my order preference. With kind of 3, 4, 3, and 2 in that order being preference. Not to say that it's not a great dram, but it was just my personal preference. So I'm pleasantly surprised to see it pipping as people's favorites here. Nicolette says Leven's more than just a good golf courses, or Leven's more than just a good golf course. What can I say? Maybe it's a thing, Scott. The British people just like Leven, like, you know.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is.
Yeah.
But for me, it's fascinating about all the wonderful different notes everybody's getting, but also the difference in people's views on it, because that's always a challenge, is trying to come up with a whiskey that you hope that I certainly like, but the hope is that other people will see it and how I see it. So tonight's voting, as you call it, is very interesting, because the leaving is doing high, but as you read up and down, there is other of the peated ones coming through.
Yeah, definitely. No, yeah, no, you're right. I think the leaving is the winner, but it's by no means a a runaway. It's quite
No,
a balanced thing. Leven says Leven not been the same since they knocked the power station down. Is there a reference there I'm not getting, Scott? Do you know it?
no, I don't.
Ah, interesting.
No,
Maybe you could fill us in on that,
lost in me.
Martin. As I say, I've only been in the country 2 years. Clarendon says we like the richness of the Leven. So no, that's great. So as I say, that discount code is WS24S or to get 15% off all the drams we've tried here. And if you just type InchDairnie into the thing, you should be able to find all of them, including the RyeLaw on the website. They aren't currently linked from your tasting pack page as they normally would, because the products didn't exist when the pack went on sale. But I will link them between now and when the recording goes out, so you can link straight in through there without having to go searching for them. And just I saw George Best play at Leven Met Hill. There you go, that's a good memory. Stefan Sir said, nice to see new distillery making such good whiskey. Good that you had the patience to wait for longer maturation for the first release. 100% agree. Yeah, so any thoughts on that, Scott?
No, the business model that we have is, as I said at the very start, 70% of what we produce, we don't keep ourselves. We use it within the trade, and that's just a different business model. We didn't do vodka, we didn't do gin, we don't do visitors. We're purely focusing on the whiskey, and because of that business model, that enables us to be able to wait. I'm not just saying, no, there's some wonderful whiskies coming out, and they know at 3 and 4 years old. But we'd given the opportunity that we could wait and only release it when we felt it was the best. So that's made my job a little bit easier, and that I'm not constrained by having to get liquid out. It gives me an opportunity to wait until I feel it's ready. But also, as showcased tonight, is by having the different liquids maturing in the site, I get to play about with it. And what's wonderful tonight is that people have embraced the liquid the same way that I did when I was sitting in the lab, adding various potions together, some people might say. So yes, I love it, and the fact that we can have a bit of patience and wait. The one thing I will say is that we have got a plan for the releases over the years. 2029 is when we believe we'll launch the 12-year-old single malt, but there will be other releases as time goes on, as we get to learn and understand the liquid. Because as well as being a new distillery, what is a benefit of being unknown? The slight part is that people don't know who we are, but we don't know what the liquid can do. So we're very much learning as we go along. Though the good example is the rye. There's no rule book or any book written on how the rye tastes, how it matures. So we're very much writing that as we go along, which is a great place to be. But it can be a bit frustrating as well that we have to wait, and some things, it's good things come to those that wait. And unfortunately, on this occasion, you will have to wait a little bit further. But I will give you a slight snippet in that next year we will be launching our first InchDairnie single malt, and it will be a peated malt. It'll be from a Kinglassie product. So you'll have to sit and hear about that. So watch this space in the coming year. That's what I'll say. There's a little snippet there.
Marvelous. That's good. I suppose that answers maybe Julie's question in the chat there. What's next from InchDairnie? So that's the next one, is it?
Yeah, that's the next one we're aiming for, is the Kinglassie.
And will there be a RyeLaw Vintage 2018?
Watch this space. I mean, I'm monitoring it closely, and as we said, we're learning how the RyeLaw ages. When we launched the rye, as we did, it was 5 years old, and I thought it was at the perfect point. But I'm also getting some wonderful liquid that I laid down for another year, and it's different again. And as I said before, each year we put it into a different wood style, and that is having a complete impact on the liquid. So I've always said from the very beginning that we would listen to the liquid, and we wouldn't launch it every year. We would launch it when we felt it was ready. So it may be this year, it may be next year. I'm afraid you'll just have to wait and see.
Fair enough. No, that's a good answer. Martin said, from a young distillery, you've showcased real class range. Clear, a lot of love has gone into this. Thank you. And Jonathan said, will there
Thank you, Martin.
And Jonathan said, will there be more accessible releases, or are you sticking with the premium small batch approach?
It's a very good question. We are having lots of conversations at the moment on, no, we had a vision about releasing our single malt in 2029. But as we're understanding the consumers and understanding our liquid, we're evaluating all possibilities. So although that's not really, it's more of a politician's answer, isn't it? Not giving you a straight answer, but we are looking at it. I'm looking at all the liquid as it grows, as it matures. As I was saying to Luke, I had a difficult job a few weeks ago where I had to nose and taste 75 samples
Yeah.
of the different liquid that is sitting in the warehouse.
And as I
And
said
that's
to you when you said that earlier on, I'll get out the violin for you, but you know.
and that's only from 1 year. I've got another 20 samples sitting waiting for me to nose when I go back to the site, which is from the 2017. So we're very much listening to the liquid and seeing how it matures, seeing how it interacts with the wood, because we had a plan and we put the different styles of InchDairnie into different wood, and we're monitoring how it's performing, how it's growing, and how it's maturing. So at this moment in time, to answer the question, is we'll just have to wait and see. But we are very much listening to the liquid, but also listening to people like yourself, what their views on it. Because ultimately, as a distiller, I want people to be drinking the whiskey. So the more people that they can drink it, the better, in my view. But ultimately, we are a business as well. So it's getting that right balance.
Yeah, fair enough. I thought we'd get the politician's answer from the Holyrood distillery, but you know. Andrew says, can the public buy single casks?
Yes, but it's not. I'm laughing because I'm going to tell you. So what we do is every year we release 30 casks, and as I spoke about earlier, we do the InchDairnie seasons. So we do a spring, a summer, an autumn, and a winter. And this year is the summer. And what we do is we choose and only release 30 casks. And the casks that the liquid goes into is casks that we don't replicate in the standard InchDairnie. So it's very much unique to that offering. Now, a cask is £12,000, but that includes the cask, the liquid, and the bottling. And as I pointed out tonight, the wonderful designed bespoke bottle, it will be filled into that bottle, and it will have a label specific to you as well. So that's where we're slightly different. Also, as the distillery grows, you can only come and visit the distillery if you're a member of the club. And we have built a bespoke warehouse for the cask club, and the members get to come to visit the distillery. They get a chance to see their cask in the warehouse, and I've also put some other casks in there to mature, and you get to sample these casks. So it's very much a unique experience, and that's what we're looking for. It's about being an experience and not, the liquid is only part of that. So if anybody's interested, then please be in touch with Luke, and we can get the details over to you what this year's offering. But we're restricting it to 30, as I said, Luke. I'm in the process of evaluating the concept of it being a club. What I mean by that is offering not just the cask, but other perks from having the membership. But that's something that is a work in progress that we'll know more about in the coming months.
Very good. No, excellent. And yeah, as Scott said, just drop me an email and we'll put you onto the InchDairnie. Chris has said, if you look into in relation to your the travails, sampling all these whiskies, this burden you must bear for the rest of us. He said that if you're looking for a very senior apprentice, he's your man.
Thank you for your kind offer, Chris. If anything pops up, I'll keep you in mind.
Perfect. Brilliant. Jonathan said, thanks a lot for this evening. I'd add that you might not be able to visit InchDairnie unless you buy a cask, but Scott is great to talk to, and the InchDairnie stand is well worth visiting at whiskey festivals. And Jeff says, great evening. Thanks, Scott. So thank you for your time, Scott. It has been a great evening. Fantastic tasting with some fantastic drams. So yeah, Zhao has just said there, the very impressive range. So thank you. The plaudits are flowing in there with Nicolette as well. So thanks for your time, Scott. As I say, the discount code is WS24 SRR. David said, what's next? We've got Bowmore next Thursday that will go on sale about 2 o'clock tomorrow. So if you want to join our Bowmore tasting, please do. And yeah, then in the meantime, make sure to pick up one of these InchDairnie bottles. Steph and Sarah said just got two
Thank you.
bottles.
Yeah,
Two of each,
thank you
I
for
hope,
that,
Steph.
Steph and Sarah.
So brilliant. Thank you everyone for joining, and hopefully see you on Bowmore again. And if you've any questions that we didn't get to tonight, or about that Cask Club or anything else, just drop an email to the link you would have got the email, reply to the email you got the Zoom link from, and we'll get any questions answered or any issues sorted. So yeah, we look forward to seeing you on the next Digital Drams. And Scott, maybe in a year or so, if you've released another couple of whiskies, maybe another more sample room ranges, or that single malt, and or a next batch of RyeLaw, all of the above, we maybe get you back on.
Yeah, definitely. I'm more than welcome to come back again, Luke.
Marvelous. Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you very much, Luke, and thank you everyone for tonight. Thank you for the wonderful comments, and also thank you for the very interesting tasting notes. I've learnt a lot myself tonight on the liquid.
Brilliant. Excellent. Thanks, Scott, and thanks everyone.
Thank
and
you.
we'll catch you again soon. Brilliant.
Okay.
Again, one last time, that discount code's WS224 SRO, and the email will go out tomorrow with the recording of this and a link to those as well. So we'll catch you soon. Cheers, folks. Bye bye.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye bye.
Cheers, Scott. Thanks very much.